Good Wednesday to you, everybody. Income 831. Welcome to week 2. We are rolling. Let's hmm, let's get things going properly here. What do we have here for coffee cup? Vienna, but in Viennese, German, Austrian. Venn, cool city, man. One of my favorites in Europe. Okay, now I am here again, your sufficiently caffeinated communication instructor with studio lights. That's better. So for those of you who have not had me before, normally the way these videos go is I'll talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing this week, and then we'll take a look back at your discussion questions, your answer from last week, because, excuse me, it's from these discussion questions that I will draw the questions for the final exam. So if you stay current on the readings and the discussion and you watch these videos, you'll know exactly what we're going to be looking for. Now, concerning the discussion questions, you'll note that there's going to be a slight change in the verbiage. Okay. So for each question, you need to come up with an answer. And I've hitherto said that you need to respond to 3 of your classmates. You know, I would have it that a critical mass of you, like more than 3, would answer these questions before Monday night at 11:45 p.m. But that doesn't seem to be how it works out. In fact, a number of people contacted me and said, hey, I'd love to respond to 3 people. There aren't 3 people here in the discussion board for this question to respond to. What am I supposed to do? Excuse me. And so you'll notice that I've tweaked the verbiage just a little bit. I would still prefer that you respond to 3 people, but I will allow if you answer a question and then you have 3 responses. And if that's back and forth between like 2 or 3 of you, okay. But please, for everybody else, get in there, get the readings done, answer the discussion questions before Monday at 11:58 or something like that, because there's the rest of the class is dependent on you. Okay. All right. So for this week, I have posted both in the assignments folder and a link through the module your part 1 of your semester paper. Now, I want to emphasize this for those of you who have not had me before. You're going to do 1 semester paper, okay? But you will do it in 2 parts. And the reason that I do this is so I can really help you as a researcher and a writer. And I need to see just, about half of the total of what you're going to be doing. I go over it very carefully, give you a lot of feedback. If helpful, we'll even meet to talk about what it is that you wrote. Okay. But for that to work for this section, we call it phase 1. I don't call it section 1, section 2. This is complete work. No draft work. This is not a draft. Okay. So go into the either assignment tab in Canvas or this week's module, and you will find the instruction sheet for your research paper part 1. Okay. And it essentially, it needs to contain, part 1 is the following 3 things. An introduction in which you clearly state the purpose of your focus, the purpose and focus of your research. An annotated bibliography, we'll come back to that, and then a methodology section. Okay. Now, normally you do not put an annotated bibliography in a research paper unless the research paper is annotating a bibliography about a certain topic. Excuse me, and I have a cold or something, just will not leave me alone. So if I'm, like I am, pardon me. So normally annotated bibliographies don't go in a research paper, but, right, what I want you to do in this case is use the annotated bibliography as a means by which you locate the best sources that you're going to build your paper around, and you describe why they're the best sources. An annotated bibliography, again, unless it's the focus of the research is for you as a researcher. You can read all kinds of articles. You know, am I going to read this? They're not all going to go into your research paper, right? So when you do, first of all, if you don't know the difference between an annotated bibliography and a literature review, as academics, you need to know that, all right? And so later on in the next phase, you're going to convert your annotated bibliography into a literature review. And if you don't know what that is, then I'm going to ding you for it. Okay, but in your annotated bibliography, and which goes in part 1, that's fine. Okay, you need to review the author's studies, the analysis, the objectives. You need to explain the theoretical approach or framework used for the study, okay, by the author. You need to explain the methodology that the author undertakes. You need a summary of the author's major findings and conclusions. And then most importantly, critique how well the author gathered the data, asked questions of the data, analyzed the data, and then interpreted the results. This is essential. This is a fundamental skill for you now as communicators. It used to be, okay, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that one of the fundamental skills for researchers and communicators was learning where to find the information, because you know certain types of information was contained in certain libraries, and within a library the containing of information wasn't necessarily intuitive. I mean, somebody please explain to me what's intuitive about the Dewey Decimal System and how books are cataloged. It's like, you know, DW, fill in the numbers. What? Okay. So you had to learn the process by which you went and found the information. That's gone. Nowadays, you can just hold something in your hand and ask, where do I find? The amount of information available to you is super abundant. Your job now is to be able to discern beef from BS when it comes to the information. And the heart of that is your development of analytical skills of what the researcher is up to and how well they do it. So you develop a keen eye for someone that's overstretching the conclusions, their stated conclusions based on the data. You develop a keen eye for garbagey information that goes into an analysis. Because as the saying goes in research, garbage in, garbage out. If you take junky data that's been badly gathered, it's spotty, you know, it's overstretched, it's very small, and then you make these broad sweeping statements about society at large or this population or whatever. Okay, that's the point of the annotated bibliography, is to get you to start thinking in those terms, in being able to discern good data from junk. And then finally, a methodology section in which you're going to describe what methodology you'll be pursuing in this research topic. Now, I strongly advise that you select not only a subject, but a methodology that either meshes nicely with or supports by way of building your knowledge of the literature, whatever it is that you're going to do, for whether you're, you know, if you're pursuing the traditional dissertation route or sort of the capstone project route for those of you in the Doctorate of Strategic Communications. Don't pick a topic that's unrelated to the bigger topic that you're doing for the whole degree. And if you don't have that topic figured out, the big one for the whole degree, figure it out. It's just you don't have the time to be spending, you know, chasing this thing, and then you've got this big either dissertation or capstone project to pursue. Grow your depth and breadth of knowledge within the subject matter that interests you. So focus on that. All right. And I'm not here to tell you what it is. That's up to you. However, if the methodology you wish to pursue involves interaction with live subjects, you know, like real people, whether that's surveys or interviews or whatever, you have to get IRB approval. And as I said before, if you want, and some of you already have, if you want to get IRB approval, and that's that's their internal review board that goes, oh, okay, this research is ethical. This person knows what it's doing. You have to take the city training and quiz. You have to get a CAIUS or CUS, however you want to pronounce it, CAY use account through the university, and then you have to write up your research and submit it to the IRB board. And you got to do this fast because they get a lot of requests, and the turnaround from these guys is not quick. Okay, so last week in the modules or the announcements or somewhere, yeah, I put the links for the city training. You have to you ask me if you want a CAIUS account. You say yes, and then there's just some information you provide to me, and I send a request for you because I'm the faculty member that says, yeah, okay, this person's actually a live person doing research, and then that will set you up your CAIUS account, and there's a dashboard on there that you enter your research topic in, and it goes to IRB, right? But you got to start that lickety split because they just get so backed up. They just got so much to do. Okay. All right. So, sort of other things, we're going to continue our reading in Hoax. Everything Connects, which I thought I had a copy of. Oh, yes, I do, right there. I like this book. It's been around for a while, but the fundamentals. See, I like to pick books that, although they're a little dated, which means it costs you less, the fundamental principles therein are still applicable now. And I think this is one of them. Okay. So we're going to continue our reading in Hoax. You will settle on a topic for your semester, your research paper. You'll get that sheet for part 1 and internalize it so you'll understand what you're going to write your introduction. You're going to know what an annotated bibliography is, and you're going to decide on a methodology. Okay, and you're going to get that rolling this week because time is a ticking, and part 1, for me to give you feedback, I need some time to look at it. Part 1 is due February 16th. All right. Now, last word on this. Here's how I work it. Since writing is rewriting and research is re-research, if you turn in to me a final product for part 1, not draft work, a final product, and you don't get the score that you want. Let's say you get a low 80 or something, or even a 70. If you correct the things that I say, hey, change this, and you keep the things, I go, oh, hey, keep doing this. When you do part 2, because part 1, you're going to put part 1 and part 2 together for the whole paper. If you fix that stuff in part 1 when you do part 2, and you score higher, I will go back and change the score to correspond to the percentage that you got on part 2. So for instance, let's just say percentage wise, part 1, you got an 80. And then I said, yeah, I'll tell you why you got an 80. You did this, and, do this, don't do this. And then in part 2, you change that. All right. You stick part 1 to part 2, and then on for the whole paper, that's part 2 plus part 1, you get a 90. I'll go back and change the percentage on part 1 to a 90, but only if part 1 is finished work. If you send me draft work and then you fix it later, you're gonna keep the percentage that you get. Okay. All right. So because good writing is rewriting, and I want you to take to heart the comments that I make, and even we can meet by Zoom, and I'll go over the stuff with you. And we're developing as professional researchers and writers, and this is a craft. I write a lot now, and I still work on my writing. I have editors that look at my stuff. I think it would be better if you wrote it like this. And I go, okay. So that's how it goes. We're all going through it. Okay. Question number 1 from last week. Let's take a look at those. See what you said. See what you did. What do long-term plans have to do with dynamic presence? Please provide a link to an article in a journal, magazine, or newspaper that somehow links these 2 variables together. Okay, this is extremely important for you as a Christian communicator. All right, because when we say dynamic presence, what you got to do in life, you and I and everybody, what is your frame of reference? Who do you want to be? How do you want to approach things? Hmm? And then, and being a righteous person, a holy person. This isn't going to just fall out of the sky on you. You have to cultivate this in yourself. You have to cultivate this through planning. Planning. Okay. So let's see what you had to say. Let's see. Alicia. Long-term plans help to establish the foundation and devotion to goals set in dynamic presence. According to Hoke and Bear, we shouldn't leave him out when we mention the authors. To thrive in the current state of volatility, leaders must be aware of the present moment while simultaneously setting their sights on long-term goals. Purpose must be part of the present. Excellent. Excellent. Now, if you happen to see this question again on an exam, wink, that would be a very excellent answer. I'd say, okay. It's easy and comfortable to work with the mindset of it's not broke, don't fix it. But I have learned through my experience as a leader that it is wise to begin with the end in mind. In fact, and very well said, by the way, Alicia. It's not only wise, it's just. And the means do not justify the end. So understand what you're aiming at, but just everything, anything you want to get to doesn't justify how you get there. No. Okay. Hoke and Bear stress the most static systems are the most fragile. The authors note it takes a dynamic person with a positive, honest, forward-looking attitude to inspire and influence people. Well put. Well put. Excellent. Yeah, you have to decide. You have to decide on authenticity. Who are you going to be? And then how are you going to get to that state? It's not just going to fall. None of us, brothers and sisters, none of us are going to get dragged into heaven. All right. It's not going to work that way. Question number 2. What 2 major points about talking while working were you most impressed with in chapter 3? This is kind of a trick question. I don't mean impressed with as in, whoa, hey, I like it. But, made an impression on me. Carolyn, one major talking point I was impressed with chapter 3, Everything Connects, is the aspect of feedback loop under time, stimulation, and success. They say we are creatures of and victims of our feedback loops. In fact, we are entirely run by feedback loops. I could give you a whole lecture on that. As a combat veteran, I am often guilty of remaining mentally in the past, and I have a hard time connecting with the present, especially when negative feedback loops interrupt an otherwise ordinary, successful moment of time. Okay, thank you for your candor and your service. The emphasis in this week's reading on meditation as a daily practice of devotion reminds me of the many therapies that I have been most effective in my life, and I pause to do an 11-minute meditation in between my readings and these dialogues. When I reflect on the time I was most successful professionally is when I was most connected to my own inner positive feedback loops. Okay, good answer. And now, feedback loops are a identifiable and predictable aspect of our mind's communication, especially intrapersonal. It's interesting within the study of communications, there's a lot of debate as to whether one talking to oneself constitutes communication. I happen to think it does. Interpersonal communication. And now the reason for the debate is, well, there's not really a separate sender and receiver. The sender is the receiver. Okay, but the research shows going all the way back to some of the pioneers in this, and they got things wrong, but guys like Sigmund Freud, we're going to get that to focus. There we go. Come on, there we go. I went to Professor Freud's house and I got this pen. True story. Okay, this is from his home that's now a museum in Vienna. Very cool afternoon. Is that the research shows, and Carl Jung, the research shows is that either A, people see a division within themselves, they're talking to themselves in the mirror, like, listen, you, or B, they're unaware of this division. There's this sub-self, this subconscious, unconscious, lower self that's engaging in these behaviors, and the upper self either just rationalizes it away or is not sure why it's going on. So is communication back and forth between those two manifestations, maybe I can use the word, the self, genuine communication? I believe that it is. I believe that it is. Okay. And within that dynamic, all right, feedback loop dominates. That is, you have a desire, you try to fulfill that desire, you get a return, and then your mind says, oh, okay, so if I do that, if I have this need and I do this, this is the return that I get. Now, feedback loops can either be constructive or deconstructive for the individual. So, for instance, let's say that someone has a difficult time socializing, and we are highly integrated and highly connected entities. In fact, we're not who we are without integration and connection. All right, that's a basic part of being human, and that's what drives the business of communication. But let's say someone is lacking in the social skills necessary for the connectivity. The body, the mind desires connectivity, but runs into these difficulties, and so therefore the person uses alcohol as a social lubricant to help lower those resistance barriers, and they connect socially. Then the feedback loop becomes in the mind: alcohol equals social connection, and I desire more social connection, and therefore I consume more alcohol. This becomes an unproductive feedback loop. Okay, you could say negative feedback loop, but I dislike that because of other research possibilities, or research terminology, I should say. Okay, so yeah, good answer, Carolyn. I recommend meditation. I do it frequently. There's a practitioner, a Dutch man by the name of Wim Hof, Wimhof. Go ahead and look that up. It's a method centered in breathing. And remember, too, for those of you who have or you haven't tried meditation, you don't. The purpose of meditation is not to think of nothing. That's not possible. But it is rather to focus on a specific something. Okay, and I'm a Catholic Christian. And so we partake in meditative and focused prayer all the time. One of the ways in which that's practiced, we call it a novena. That is, we pray for a specific intention, usually for somebody else, for over the course of 9 days. There's nothing magical about the number. There are some novenas that are longer. Or some prayer cycles that are longer. I am now involved in a prayer cycle that is 12 years. Okay. So you can use this meditative process to think about those things that you're praying for. You're not going to think that the goal is not to think about nothing. The goal is to discipline the mind to think about a specific something. All right. So keep that in mind too, for those of you that, you look at meditation, you go, yeah, I don't see how that's possible. Okay. Just make sure you understand what the possible is. Question number 3. Why do the authors of Everything Connects devote a whole chapter to authenticity? Give an example from your own life or from someone close to you that illustrates the powerful influence of authenticity. Okay. Trinity. Reading about the importance of authenticity, the authentic self was really rewarding. It makes me think of the curiosity without courage becomes daydreaming. Nicely put. Purpose without courage becomes frustration. Courage without purpose becomes chaos. When you have all three, you have a drive. In the words of Hockenberg, it is the work of bringing our authentic self into the world. Absolutely. And this question could not be of greater importance to you now as a Christian. Some say we're living in a post-Christian age. Maybe in another video, I'm not sure if it's post-Christian. I think this is actually a very Christian age. I think we're living, and I'm always careful about what I want people to understand when I say this. We're living in an age of Antichrist. If you read the book of Revelation, Antichrist is not the great deceiver. That's not the Antichrist. The Antichrist appears as a false prophet and is pleasant, is attractive, is alluring. I should say, let me tweak that. I believe we're living in an age of antichrists, plural. All right. And look, You cannot detect what you don't know. If you're not an authentic Christian, you're never going to be able to sniff out Antichrist. Okay, you're going to get fooled every time. Good answer. Question number 4. Why is personal identity an important variable when understanding how people make important connections in organizations in today's mediated world? Maya. Hockenberg state to be authentic means you have the ability to understand who you are, what you want to be, and how you want to fit into the world. Our identity is shaped by the decisions we make and actions we take in response to the world. When we possess self-knowledge, we can communicate with confidence, transparency, and the courage to be vulnerable. It is essential to forming meaningful connections and partnerships required for organizational collaboration and long-term sustainability. Excellent answer. Excellent, excellent. Now, in another class that I'm teaching, Comms 651, it's public relations. They're doing a big, and some of you are in both classes, so you know this. They're doing a big group research project, which they're designing a public relations campaign. One of the first things I asked them to do is to make an assessment of themselves as to what sort of role they feel that they best, fulfill within a team structure. And hey, if you're the researcher, then be the researcher. If you're the writer, then be the writer. If you're the leader, then be the leader. Okay, do what you do, don't do what you don't do, but find out what that is. Okay, now, and especially now, because there are so many there's tremendous forces pressing down on us, trying to hijack our identity from things that are silly like TikTok trends to things that are more subtle, like defining the worth in your mind of who you are as an individual based on what you wear, consume, buy, drive, where you're seen, what social media platform you are on or not on, what you tweet or retweet. Oh my Lord. The starting point of self-authenticity is not an external rubric. It's not an external yardstick. It is internal. It is internal. And where does that start? What is the internal yardstick by which we ought to be measuring ourselves? Righteousness. Are we close to God? Excuse me. Do we have that relationship? Is it as healthy and robust as possible? Let's start with that and then go out into the world. Okay. Question number 5. Very important. Neuroplasticity. What is it? Okay. How can mindfulness through neuroplasticity help us take steps to be successful communicators? Charlene, you were last. Let's take you. 1:45 a.m. Charlene, get some sleep. Excuse me. Neuroplasticity is defined as the brain's ability to adapt its structures and functions throughout life based on experience. Perfect. Now, I might ask you to unpack that in an answer and put it into plain English. Okay. But the plain English is your brain is tremendously adaptable, regardless of your age and your life experience. Is it easy to adapt and learn new skills and learn different perspectives on the world? No. The brain wants to do what it's continued to do. The body system wants to do what it's continued to do. We're in a period in our country in which we're placing tremendous amounts of attention on the physical body, which is not bad. All right. We don't place much on the brain. But now so they've inverted the food pyramid. Like, well, up top here's all this protein, and way down here only little bitty amounts of refined grains, which is true. I mean, do you know how many carbohydrates your body needs to operate day to day? To operate health in a healthy way? 0. You don't need any carbohydrates. Okay, and especially the highly refined carbohydrates that make up a lot of our foods. Okay, so we're placing this tremendous emphasis on the body. One of the problems that people are not aware of, that you get to a certain weight and you want to go down. Well, there's an interesting thing about the body. The body does not understand. Okay, so we put this weight on in the first place, and the body assumes that we're adding. I got to drop, about 10 more pounds. The body assumes, well, you put this weight on for a reason, right? There must be some terrible strain. There must be a long, hard winter in which we're not going to have food, or you wouldn't have given us these extra calories. And then you try to take the calories away without this long, hard winter or this really extraneous effort. And the body's like going, whoa, 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 we're going to need these for whatever is coming. We know something's coming. We don't know what it is. And your metabolism slows down. So if you're trying to lose weight, the body wants to stay at equilibrium. The brain too wants to stay at equilibrium. So you're going to have to push. You're going to have to be a little uncomfortable. And you know what? Discomfort's not a bad thing. Okay? The purpose of life is not pleasure and comfort. The purpose of life is authentic purpose. Authentic purpose. And so, no, you're not going to work for the authentic purpose business as a communicator, but any business that you go to work for, you must have authentic purpose in who you are. I would suggest you have that very clear within yourself before you go to work for an organization. So you don't get into a place in a situation in which you're working at cross currents to your values. Okay? All right. Good job with the questions. Downloads that sheet and start phase 1 of your research. If you have any questions, give me a call or reach out to me and we can meet during my office hours. All right. I think about you, I pray about you, and I will see you on Canvas. God bless everybody.